What's up, music fans? Welcome back to last week's album. I'm Derek,
And I'm Kevin.
and this is usually where I say we're last week's album, but I did that already. So before we jump ahead further than we usually do, we're going to start things off like we always do, drinking a beer. Cheers, Kevin.
Cheers, Derek, and everyone at home.
Ah. This week we are talking about an album called Springtime Carnivore by an act called Springtime Carnivore. So, as you might have surmised, this is a self-titled album. Springtime Carnivore is the brainchild of Greta Morgan, who describes her sound as Technicolor daydream music. This is her self-titled, obviously, as I mentioned, but this is her debut album. And this is co-produced by Richard Swift, who's worked with the Black Keys, the Shins, and Foxygen. Kevin and I were debating off camera as to the level of involvement of Richard Swift here. From what we gather, at least 3 songs, maybe more, but don't let that detract from Greta Morgan's work here, because she did a lot of the instruments as well as the productions. And so that brings us to Sounds Like. So Kevin, why don't you tell us what Springtime Carnivore sounds like?
Sure, Derek. I think this album sounds like the soundtrack to a 1970s high school dance at a glow-in-the-dark skating rink. What do you think, Derek?
Yeah, I like that. Mine's coming from a completely different place, and I think Springtime Carnivore sounds like a hungry bear waking up from its hibernation, and it's starving only for psychedelic bubblegum pop.
Nice. Well done, Derek.
Because, he woke up, he's like, I've been hibernating, and there's only one thing I'm hungry for right now. And that's what it is. So, key track, Kevin, what did you have?
Derek, for my key track, I'm going with Sun Went Black. How about you?
Black, that's a good one. I'm actually going with Name on a Matchbook, which precedes your key track, so I'll kick us off. Name on a Matchbook opens with a prominent whistle hook, which just I dug immediately. Driving piano, crisp electric guitar riff, grooving bass guitar, bass snare drum beat, and synths kind of hovering above. Kind of felt like an upbeat soul feel to me, which I really liked. The vocal melodies here were fantastic. The verses really just featured Greta's lone vocals, but in the chorus there were much more layers and at times kind of a round type structure melody going on. Just sounded very large and very just incredibly catchy melody there. The lyrics kind of describe internal debate as to whether or not to open oneself to a stranger, in this case in the form of a name on a matchbook. Which I was kind of wondering, why not a bar napkin? Who really uses matches these days? But for all intents and purposes of this song, just fantastic. Kind of had this nostalgic undertones, but at the same time sounded very fresh and clean.
Derek, napkin. Who really uses napkins these days? Don't you just put it in the phone?
I use my shirt sometimes.
I think that sort of speaks to the throwbackness of this album as a whole. Seems to make sense in the context.
Absolutely. I completely agree. Yeah.
My key track, however, is called Sun Went Black, and it is appropriately dark and haunting in sound. There's some spooky synths, these ghostly backing vocals, ominous hand claps, which might be the first time hand claps have sounded ominous, peppy guitars, pop and percussion, lead vocals sort of veiled behind this effect. And hazy moments sort of punctuate these spacey vintage vibes. The chorus vocals echo almost like they're underwater, which is a nice effect. And overall, it sounds a little bit like Jefferson Airplane's Somebody to Love, but with a little more 80s synth and guitars. And while most of the album is a little bit like precious and sweet, this one I felt I liked anyway because it's a little bit rougher and rawer. So definitely check out Sun Went Black.
Yes, that's a good one. I like your ominous hand claps there. That's I just had to hand clap myself there off camera. So that brings the best lyric. Kevin, what did you have?
Derek, I'm going with a lyric from Other Side of the Boundary, which is actually full of great lines. The one I chose, however, goes, I'm a bullet, just a bullet, waiting for the speed of sound to carry me around. And I just thought that's a really cool thought, to think of a bullet as something very passive, and it's sort of waiting on this immense force to bring it into action. So just kind of an interesting thought there in a lyric. What about you, Derek? What'd you go with?
Kevin, mine actually comes from Other Side of the Boundary as well, as you mentioned, just tons of great literature. Mine is, I'm the cruel joke in your horoscope, but your constellation's clear now. I really dug that because it's, obviously the kind of wordplay there, joke in your horoscope, just kind of intriguing there. But then, a lot of times people get caught up in the minutia. But then, sometimes and you can't see the forest through the trees, but, just letting it go. I just think she kind of encapsulated that in a very small phrase there, which I just really dug. So that brings us to overall rating. Kevin, what do you think of Springtime Carnivore?
Derek, I'm giving Springtime Carnivore a 4. Not just because it rhymes. I think this is a great album. I think it's familiar, yet kind of mysterious and new and nuanced in interesting ways. It's almost like She and Him meets Angel Olsen. There's some sweet bubblegum pop, as Derek mentioned, but these rougher, raw, darker sides, a little bit more like Angel Olsen. There's some fun, there's some darkness, there's plenty of depth amidst this sort of dance pop, if you will. And at 14 tracks, it's a little long, but I do think it's pretty rad. She recorded most all the instruments herself, and it sounds like produced the album almost all by herself, with a little bit of help from Richard Swift. So I can't fault her for going too big all on her own. And lots of old school vibes, but it still feels kind of fresh amidst today's sort of postmodern times. So 4 out of 5. What do you think, Derek?
Kevin, I'm giving it 4 out of 5 for a lot of the same reasons. I thought there were a lot of tracks, especially, Name on a Matchbook, which I kind of described, and Collectors, which did have that nostalgic kind of, something you can connect to type vibe, but there was this newness, uniqueness to it that it was maybe more present at times than others, but yeah, I really dug that. I really like your she and him illusion there, because I really had a lot of the same thoughts going through here, but much darker, kind of like an edgier M Ward there, if you will. I think that, for a debut, I thought this was very solid. Instrumentation was tight, and overall, I just thought it was pretty imaginative way to bring together a lot of these genres, and sometimes they're so subtle, it's hard to touch on them all here. So there you have it, an 8 out of 10 from the both of us, so you really need to go check out Springtime Carnivore's self-titled debut. And thanks again for joining us here at last week's album. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on the other social media avenues. And don't forget to join us again next week. We're going to continue talking about good music. Until next time, I'm Derek.
And I'm Kevin. See you next time, guys.